Hi everyone, it's Simone Watson, and today I want to talk about 5 misconceptions about editors. As you know, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, I'm a writer, but I'm also an editor. I've been a freelance editor for 3 years. I was an acquisitions editor for a year and a half. Acquisitions editors are people that work at a publishing house. They take submissions, they evaluate those submissions for, to acquire. And when you go to get traditionally published, you will have an editor, and that'll be an acquisitions editor. But freelance editors are people that are hired. And so the things that I'm talking about in this video are more geared toward freelance editors, but some of it is in the overlap of both. So, misconception number 1, you need to hire an editor if you want to be traditionally published. In other words, you need to hire an editor before querying. This is not true. Generally, you write a book, you revise it, you get some beta readers, you revise it some more, get some critique partners, revise it some more, and you get some more beta readers, and you revise it some more. If you need sensitivity readers, you do that also, and you revise it some more, and then you query it. Generally, that would be the order that I would advise that you do these things. You don't need to hire an editor if you're going to traditionally publish, and you can if you want to, but generally, you know that once you get an agent, like, y'all are going to go through it, y'all are going to make changes, and then you're going to sell the manuscript, and you're going to have a new editor, and y'all are going to make changes, and you do want your manuscript to be the best it can be before it goes to an agent, but it's also like still a manuscript. They are not thinking that they're looking at it and that is the final draft that's going to go on shelves, if that makes sense. So if you really, you've been having a lot of issues, you've worked on it with CPs and different things like that, and you're like, I really want to hire an editor, I can understand that, but just don't think that, like, if you don't hire an editor, you're not going to be successful at getting traditionally published, because that is not true. Misconception number 2 is that if you are self-publishing, you do not need an editor. Okay, y'all can call this biased advice if you want to, because I am an editor, but I will tell you something. If I were to self-publish a novel, I would hire an editor. Even though I am an editor, when you look at your own manuscript, it's your own writing, there are certain things about it that you are not going to be able to pinpoint. There are things that need another person's eyes on them. These could be grammatical issues, so yes, you want copy editing and proofreading, but it could also just be like, you need another brain to come in and like help your brain. Someone might say, well, yeah, but can I just get critique partners? Can I be the person that you were talking about who's getting traditionally published? Well, here's the thing. What I said about traditionally published authors is when you send your manuscript to agents, they're not expecting it to be the final draft that's going to go on shelves. So that's going to go through some more work. When you're self-publishing, it is the exact opposite. The product that you put out there, that is the draft that you're going to publish, and you do want it to be the absolute best it can be, and you want to get somebody that is a professional to go through, and I would recommend you get developmental, line, and copy edits. If y'all want another video about the differences with those, I will make one, because I have more knowledge about that now than I did in the past, but you really need to make it strong enough for a reader. And in order to do that, I feel you really need a professional editor. Also get betas, also get critique partners, but you need a professional editor. This goes into misconception number 3. This is kind of a two-parter, okay? The first part of misconception number 3 is that an editor is the same as a beta reader or a critique partner, or even like a reader, like a reader that would just review your book. The sort of other side of this misconception is that your critique partners should line edit your entire manuscript, which is a matter of opinion, but I'm going to get to it in a second. So a beta reader, a critique partner, and an editor are going to give you 3 different levels of feedback in general. A beta reader is reading your book like a reader, for how enjoyable it is and things like that. Usually I would say they'll give you like 1 to 2 pages of feedback, maybe. It always depends, it depends on the arrangement. A critique partner is generally another writer that you can trade pages with, and you might make comments on each other's work, or you might do things in like a longer form. This will vary depending on what you and your critique partner decide. So that could be quite detailed, but it's usually not going to be like an editor. So as I mentioned before, there are different levels of editing: developmental, line, copy, etc. Developmental editing is done usually through an edit letter. Sometimes we'll have developmental and content editing combined, and content is more like the comments on your manuscript that are on a scene level, and developmental is through a letter. A developmental edit letter is usually pretty long. If you have a full-length novel, in my experience, the edit letters I've written have been like 4 to 8 pages at least. This is because this is very, very detailed feedback that is supposed to drill into the core of your manuscript and find the deeper issues. It's not just like a reader who's reading a book and is like, this part is interesting or this part was boring, okay? An edit letter is more like, okay, let's talk about the setting. Let's talk about things that worked, things that didn't work. Let's talk about character. Let's talk about the protagonist's arc throughout the story. What parts of this didn't work? What scenes maybe didn't contribute much to the plot? Or like, how did it, like, it's very, very detailed. And then line editing is kind of a different way of doing things, but line editing is editing on a sentence or paragraph level, where we actually go in and make comments, or sometimes do track changes, depends, to change the phrasing of your sentences and your paragraphs. For me, sometimes line editing can take an hour for 1,000 words. Okay, an hour for 1,000 words. That's because I'm reading the same sentences over and over, same paragraphs over and over. I might be listening to them. It's a very, very detailed, very specific process. And it is not just like, it's not something that you would typically get from a critique partner, because line editing is a lot of work. And that actually goes with the other kind of misconception I put on here. Again, this is a matter of opinion, but I don't think critique partners should line edit each other's entire novel for 2 main reasons. Number 1 is because line editing is a technical skill. A critique partner, could be like another writer. That's great, but not every critique partner really has the skill set to line edit an entire novel. You may want them to line edit a few pages or something, but I don't think that everyone has that necessary skill set. And reason number 2 is because, as I just said, line editing is a lot of work. Think about if it took you an hour to line edit 1,000 words, which sometimes it can be, quicker than that. But let's just say hypothetically, if it took you an hour to line edit 1,000 words, and somebody sends you a manuscript that's 75,000 words, and you're like, I have to line edit this because this is my critique partner. That's 75 hours of work that you're doing for your critique partner. And then you're like, well, it's okay because they're line editing mine too. I just personally feel like if you're going to line edit more than like 5,000 words, it should either A, be for a particular cause, like particular business, or like, some other thing, or you should get paid to line edit that much. Because 75 hours of work for free, like, that's a lot of work. That's my opinion. Okay. But again, you want to see who has that skill. You want to see if this person is a skilled line editor before you really, I would say when you hire a line editor, get a sample edit, because as we've just said, it's a skill, and you want to make sure that this is somebody that where you like their level of line editing and you like their style. This kind of feeds into misconception number 4, which is that a line editor will change the voice of your manuscript. This one hurts my heart a little bit because I write. My books are my babies. I wouldn't want somebody to change the voice of my manuscript, and I'm not going to change the voice of someone else's manuscript. Line editing is not about changing the voice. Line editing is about understanding the voice of that manuscript, making that voice uniform across the whole manuscript, and providing clarity in places that need clarity. Making it more succinct in places where it needs to be more succinct. Pointing out the redundancy and things like that. But it's not about changing the voice. For me, when I line edit, because I'm reading your sentences so many times, that voice is really drilled into my head. I mean, not drilled in a bad way, but it's I really get a sense of that voice, so that when I get to something where it's this sentence doesn't seem to fit, I can point that out, and it's in a way, it's contributing even more to the voice that is there. You also don't have to make changes that a line editor suggests if you don't feel comfortable with them. But I just think a really great line editor is there to bring out the best in the voice that's already there in the manuscript and give it clarity, but not there to change the voice or delete the voice or make it lack voice. This also relates to number 5, which maybe hurts my heart even more than number 4, which is that an editor wants to make your book their own. In other words, they want to take your vision for the novel and just completely throw it by the wayside and impose their own vision on it. This is such a sad thought. I don't want to make somebody else's manuscript my manuscript. That's no, okay? As an editor, whether you're developmental or line, especially developmental, because developmental is where you're going to make these huge changes. But here's the thing, I don't even make the changes as a developmental editor. I suggest the changes. You can make the changes, or you can not make the changes, or you can take those suggestions and kind of turn them into something else. One of my proudest feelings, actually, as an editor, or when I'm doing developmental editing, one of my proudest feelings is when I make a suggestion and then the writer takes that suggestion and kind of changes it a little bit, but uses it to elevate their manuscript in a way that isn't even what I thought of. It's beyond what I thought of, and I'm reading it again and I'm this is so great, I love this. I'm not gonna be man, I suggested A, you did B.5, now I'm mad. No. Man, I suggested A, you did B.5, now I'm mad. No. I want it to be the best that it can be, but I want it to be your vision. If you don't agree with what I'm suggesting, you don't have to do it, Or if you're I have some questions. For me personally, if I give you an edit letter, if you've hired me, and you have some questions, or you're what did you mean by this, or something, I'll have a conversation with you, and then we can, kind of hash out certain things. I can clarify certain things. Or if you're I really don't want to change this part, is there an alternative? We can talk about an alternative, but the idea is that I want to understand your vision for the manuscript and make that vision be accomplished, or help that vision to be accomplished in the clearest and most effective way possible. I don't want to turn it into my own vision. Please let me know in the comments if there are, questions that you have about being an editor, if there are things, if it's something that you would like to go into, or if there are other, editor or editing related topics that you would like me to talk about later on my channel, because I'm really excited. I like talking about this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.